2 hours before my son's wedding, I found out I'd been erased from it. The photographer's schedule was sitting next to the cake samples in the bridal suite. One laminated page in a room full of tulle and hairspray and nervous laughter. I read it twice, the way I read insurance claims at work when a number doesn't sit right, top to bottom, then bottom to top, waiting for the mistake to show itself. Bride with her parents, groom with the bride's parents, bride and groom with immediate family, grandparents, cousins, college friends. There was even a portrait slot for the Hendersons, the couple who introduced them at a charity dinner 3 years ago. My name was nowhere. I sat there holding the corsage I'd made the night before. One white rose, a pale blue ribbon, little sprigs of baby's breath tucked between the petals. My hands aren't steady anymore, so it took me almost an hour. Pale blue was Alan's favorite color when he was 7. He wore the same little blue tie to every school concert until it got too short, and I once stayed up past midnight sewing extra fabric into the back so he could wear it one more time. When he picked pale blue for the wedding colors, I wondered if he remembered. I never asked. I'd pictured wearing that corsage in every family photo, not to be noticed, so that someday, if Alan and Ashley had kids, those flowers would quietly tell them their grandmother had been there too. There must be a page missing, I said. Ashley didn't look up from her phone. No, that's the final version. I'm not listed, Ashley. She set the phone face down and smiled at me the way people smile at slow waiters. Please don't take this personally, Deborah. We want the family portraits to have a certain aesthetic. Too many people make the pictures feel cluttered. We can take a separate one with you later. At the reception. A pause. Maybe. Her eyes drifted down my navy dress. The one I'd paid off in 3 installments because their wedding budget had already swallowed everything else. The formal portraits will just look cleaner without extra people. Extra people. The words floated across that bridal suite, past the stylist, past the pins and the perfume, looking for somewhere to land. I turned to my son. Alan stood by the window holding 2 garment bags. He'd gone completely still. I waited for the little boy who used to reach for my hand at every crosswalk, for the teenager who scanned the bleachers after every game until he found me, for the young man who called after every job interview and asked, "Mom, how do you think I did?" Alan lowered his eyes. Here's what Ashley never knew. Here's what almost nobody knew, because I'd spent 24 years making sure of it. I was 29 when my husband died, an aneurysm, on an ordinary Tuesday morning in March. Sam kissed the top of Alan's head, told me the gutters could wait until Saturday, and was gone before the ambulance finished backing out of our driveway. His coffee was still warm on the counter when I got home from the hospital. I stood there a long time before I poured it out. Alan was 6. He slept on the floor beside my bed for a year, a dinosaur sleeping bag and a flashlight, because he was scared I'd disappear too. Every morning before sunrise, I carried him back to his own room, so he'd wake up believing he'd made it through the night on his own. 40 pounds of sleeping boy, up a flight of stairs, 300 and some mornings. My back has never fully forgiven me. I'd do it again before you finished asking. I worked the front desk at Dr. Feldman's dental practice during the day. Nights, I cleaned the Meridian Insurance building out on Route 9. 9 years of empty cubicles and industrial wax. Alan did his homework in break rooms. Once, he did it under a receptionist's desk with a flashlight while I mopped the lobby, because the sitter canceled and the floors don't care about your sitter. He got a 94 on that worksheet. I still know that number the way other people know their anniversary. 19 years later, I run Dr. Feldman's whole office. Insurance claims, mostly. 19 years of claims teaches you exactly one thing that matters. If it isn't written down, it didn't happen. So I write things down. I keep receipts. I keep confirmations, proofs, voicemails, the little paper trail of a life. Remember that. When Alan's sophomore tuition bill came up $1,800 short, I smiled and told him his father had left savings for moments exactly like this. There were no savings. There was Sam's watch, a Hamilton his own father had given him, and a shop across town that smelled like cigarettes and other people's emergencies. $600, plus Saturday shifts through the spring. Alan sailed off to chemistry class believing in his father's foresight, which is exactly what I was buying. When he couldn't cover the deposit on his first apartment, $3,100, a walk-up on Alder Street, I emptied the account I'd been saving to fix my leaking roof. The roof still leaks. I have a system, 2 pots, 1 towel, and a general understanding with the weather. I'm not telling you this so you'll feel sorry for me. I'm telling you because it's the ledger, and ledgers are the only story that never lies. Alan met Ashley 3 years ago at a charity dinner, introduced by the Hendersons, golf friends of her parents, the kind of couple who collect introductions like frequent flyer miles. Ashley Whitfield, 28 then, a brand strategist at a marketing agency downtown, with the posture of a woman who has never once wondered whether she's in the right room. The first time Alan brought her to my house, she photographed the pot roast before anyone ate it. She moved my centerpiece 4 inches to the left for the light. She looked around my living room at 24 years of a life and said, "This house has so much character. You could really do something with it." I liked her anyway, mostly. At first. Alan lit up around her like a porch in December, and I had spent his whole life wanting someone to look at him the way she did in public. I told myself the rest was style. Some people speak in feelings. Ashley spoke in presentation. Her parents were a different weather system entirely. Logan Whitfield had run a commercial roofing company for 31 years, hands like a catcher's mitt sticking out of a golf shirt, a man who looked at every building he entered from the top down. Vivian was pearls and warm vagueness, fluent in the language of smoothing things over. Ashley called them my people, without irony. I noticed noted the phrase and put it in the folder in my head where I keep things I'll need later. The folder filled fast. The engagement party was at the Whitfields Club in June, 11 months out. There was a receiving line, an actual receiving line, like a state function, and I found out I wasn't in it when I arrived and saw it already assembled. Logan, Vivian, Ashley, Alan, and Ashley's grandmother in a wheelchair with better positioning than the bar. Fine, I told myself. Space is space. Then came the toast. Ashley, radiant, glass raised, to my parents, who showed me what a marriage is supposed to look like, and to everyone who helped make Alan the man he is today. Everyone. I got a category. I stood near the shrimp with my glass up and my face doing its job. Nerves, I decided. Champagne math. A 28-year-old under pressure doesn't footnote a toast. On Monday, the club's photographer posted the gallery. 214 photos. I appear in one, at the far edge, half a shoulder, and an earring. I told myself cameras just miss short women near buffets. I mentioned it to Alan, gently, once. She's been planning this party for months, Mom. She's running on fumes. He kissed my cheek and stole a meatball off my plate like he was 9, and I let the whole thing go, because letting things go was the only sport I'd ever meddled in. That was the first time I heard my son translate her. It would not be the last. In September, Alan called with the careful voice he used at 8 years old whenever a baseball and a window had recently occupied the same airspace. There was a budget gap. Venues cost what they cost. He hated to ask. I sent $8,000. Check number 2214. Memo line. For the wedding, love, Mom. It was most of what I had that wasn't already spoken for. The check cleared in 48 hours. No call. I told myself gratitude was implied. Implied gratitude is a paycheck you can't cash, but I told myself. In October, the invitation proofs went around the family group chat. Thick cream cardstock photographed on a marble counter. Logan and Vivian Whitfield request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter Ashley Grace to Mr. Alan Samuel Callahan. Samuel, my husband's name, sitting right there in the middle of a sentence that had no room for me. I asked about it at Sunday dinner, carefully. I'd rehearsed casual in the car. Traditionally, Ashley said in the tone of a museum docent, the hosts are listed. Etiquette is actually very clear on this. I understood tradition fine. Tradition was doing an awful lot of hosting with my $8,000. Alan squeezed my shoulder on the way out. We'll fix the wording, together with their families. I'll handle it. The finished invitations arrived in January, unchanged. Mine came in the mail like everyone else's. Beautiful calligraphy, inner envelope, 1 seat reserved. I read it standing on my porch, and then I sat down on the step in February, in my coat for a while. Then I went inside and put the invitation in the folder with the canceled check. 19 years of claims. If it isn't written down, it didn't happen. It was all getting written down. In March, a PDF arrived in my inbox. Whitfield Callahan Wedding, Family Style Guide, 11 pages. Color chips like a paint store. Dusty blue, ivory, slate. A section titled Mothers of the Couple. Floor length, muted solids, no patterns, no shine. I already had a dress. Dusty rose, tea length, bought on sale in November and hanging on my closet door where I could see it from bed. I sent Ashley a photo because the guide asked for approval, and the guide was not a metaphor. Her reply came in 9 minutes. It's pretty, but it reads a little loud on camera. And maybe a higher neckline? Just thinking about what's most flattering for your age. Vivian found the most perfect navy at Dillard's. I'll send it. For your age, I was 53. Apparently that was a lighting condition. The navy was $349. I put it on a payment plan, 3 installments, because the $8,000 had emptied the well, and the corsage and gift budget was already committed. In the fitting room, I stood under those honest fluorescent lights and looked at myself. The dress was lovely. I looked like the evening sky, or like a woman being dimmed. It depends on the light, and I no longer controlled the light. I made one last attempt at the process. I asked if Vivian and I should coordinate, mother to mother. Mom's wearing champagne, Ashley wrote back. Navy will read supportive, like a beam, like underwire. I hung the dusty rose in the back of the closet, returned nothing, said nothing, and paid installment 1 of 3. The florist called me in February. This part matters, so hold on to it. Renata Sokol has run Sokol and STEM for 22 years. One of those shops where the cooler hums like a hymn, and the woman behind the counter can read a family in one order form. I happened to be at the planning coffee when she called Ashley about the peonies. Out of season. Flown in. The order had gone $2,340 over budget. Ashley's face fell, actually fell, the first uncurated expression I'd ever seen on her. And for one strange second, I saw a girl instead of a strategist. A girl watching her perfect thing wobble. Nobody deserves that face on the way to their wedding. Not even her. The next morning, I was at Sokol and STEM when Renata unlocked the door at 7:40. Cashier's check. Full difference before I'd even gone in to open Dr. A. Feldman's office. Renata looked at the check, then at me. You're the groom's mother. I'm nobody, I said. That's the point. Please keep it that way. She held my eyes for a second. 22 years of wedding arithmetic running behind hers and said, okay, honey, in a voice that suggested she'd filed me somewhere permanent. In April, the ceremony program proof circulated. On the back page in italic script, with endless gratitude to Logan and Vivian Whitfield for their extraordinary generosity. I read it in the parking lot of the print shop and laughed exactly once. The kind of laugh that doesn't involve your face. I had asked for quiet. I had received quiet. It turns out quiet has a market rate, and I was the only one paying it. I drafted a text asking about the program wording. I looked at it for a long time, then I deleted it. In claims, we call that a voluntary withdrawal. In families, we call it Tuesday. The mother-son dance disappeared in May. Marisol had given me viewer access to the planning portal months earlier, back when my job was wrangling great aunts and hotel blocks. I checked it the way other people check the weather. Timeline version 6 posted on a Thursday. The anniversary dance was in. The mother-son dance was gone. Not moved, gone. I had already chosen the song. Van Morrison, Days Like This. Sam used to hum it over pancake batter on Sunday mornings, and after he was gone, Alan and I would sway to it in the kitchen, his feet on my feet, both of us pretending the kitchen wasn't quieter than it used to be. I'd been carrying that song toward this wedding for 24 years like a ticket I never let get wet. I called Alan. We're simplifying the reception flow, he said. Flow. My son said flow like a word he'd been issued that morning with the boutonniere. Alan, it's 4 minutes. The anniversary dance includes everyone, Mom. It's more modern. Ashley thinks, and then he stopped, because we both heard it. The sentence assembling itself the way all his sentences assembled themselves now. I let him off the phone gently. Then I stood in my kitchen and played the song once, all the way through, alone, with my hand flat on the counter where a small boy's feet used to be. Then I did what I do. I filed it. At the final walkthrough, I found a moment with the wedding planner. Marisol Vega has coordinated more than 300 weddings across 16 years, and she has the specific calm of a woman who has talked 6 fathers out of 6 microphones. I asked, as neutrally as I could manage, about the dance. She looked at me for a half-second longer than the sentence needed. I always advocate for the classics, Mrs. Callahan, she said. Some decisions get made above my pay grade, and that's a professional telling you she fought and lost, in language that can't be forwarded. I thanked her. She squeezed my forearm once like a woman leaving a receipt. The rehearsal dinner was Thursday night, and I should have seen the wedding coming from the slideshow alone. I'd lent 30 photographs from the shoebox era, Alan gap-toothed, Alan in the blue tie, Alan asleep on my shoulder at his father's funeral, which I included after an hour of deciding because grief is part of the man he is. The montage ran 9 minutes. Ashley, ages 0 through 28, received roughly 7 of them. Pony rides, regattas, a girlhood with excellent lighting. Alan got 2. His college graduation, a photo I took, which is why I'm not in it. The photographer is never in it. And one from his 7th birthday, cropped tight, so that all that remained of me was a pair of hands resting on a small boy's shoulders. I have been many things to my son. That night, officially, I was a pair of hands. I was seated at table 9 between cousins of cousins and a man who once sold Logan gutters. The gutter man was lovely, for the record. We talked about drainage for 40 minutes, and it was the most honest conversation of the wedding. 2 things happened at that dinner that I didn't understand until Saturday. The first, I met the photographer, Daniel Okafor, 19 years behind a camera, 400 some weddings, a tall, quiet man who moves like he's trying not to wake the light. He shook my hand and asked, "You're Alan's mother?" And something crossed his face that I couldn't read. I read it later. Everyone reads everything later. The second, Logan Whitfield found me by the dessert table and stayed. Not politician stayed. Stayed. He asked what Alan was like as a boy. And then, this is the part that undid me a little. He listened like a man taking measurements. I told him about the blue tie and the sewn-in fabric, and he laughed from somewhere structural and said, "That's load-bearing parenting," and refilled my coffee before a waiter could. I drove home Thursday night thinking, well, at least somebody's father sees me. I had no idea. Saturday, the wedding day, you already know how it starts, but let me put you back in the room properly. I woke at 6 and made the corsage at my kitchen table with the good light coming in, 1 white rose, pale blue ribbon, baby's breath. My hands aren't steady anymore. Essential tremor, my doctor calls it. Essential, as if it's something I couldn't do without. So the wiring took almost an hour, and I pinned the ribbon crooked twice and started over both times. When it was done, I set it in a takeout container on a damp paper towel, buckled it into the passenger seat like a third generation, and drove my 12-year-old Camry out to Hollis Estate. The shared timeline said, "To Sow, family gathers, bridal suite." So at 2:05, I was in the bridal suite, being family, holding my corsage, when I saw the laminated page next to the cake samples. You know the schedule. You know the list of everyone who counted. You know the slot for the Hendersons, who contributed a dinner introduction 3 years ago, while the woman who contributed the groom was not on the page. You know what Ashley said. Cluttered, extra people. The glance down my navy dress. The dress she chose, the installments she never knew about. The whole quiet machinery of me, dismissed in one eye flick as clutter. And you know that I turned to my son, the crosswalk boy, the bleacher scanner, the job interview caller, looked at the floor. Something in me went very calm. That's the part nobody warns you about. The moment it finally happens, the moment the last invoice comes due, you don't shatter. You itemize. Item, I paid for the flowers in these photos. Item, I paid for the venue under these photos. Item, I paid for the man in the middle of these photos. In currencies nobody in this room could count. I unpinned the corsage from my dress. The pin snagged the fabric on its way out. One small thread pulled loose from the navy, a flaw in the aesthetic at last. I slipped the flowers into my purse. I stood up. "Mom," Alan finally said. Too late. I got as far as the door, hand on the knob. And I want to be honest with you about that doorknob, because the internet loves a queen who sweeps out. And that is not what was standing there. What was standing there was a 53-year-old woman doing math. If I left, I became the difficult mother-in-law in every story Ashley told for the next 40 years. The woman who abandoned her only son's wedding over pictures. If I stayed, I was clutter. Photographed never, thanked in italics addressed to someone else. Erased if I stayed. The villain if I went. She had built the schedule so that both doors lost, and I genuinely don't know which one I was about to choose. The door opened before I could. Ashley's father stepped inside carrying a worn leather album under one arm. Old family photographs for the memory table. The kind of album that gets handled until the corners go soft. Logan took one look at the purse on my shoulder, the corsage stem poking out of it, my hand on the knob, and stopped in the doorframe like a man who has walked onto a job site and smelled gas. What's going on? Ashley stayed breezy. We're adjusting the family portraits, Dad. Adjusting how? Keeping the formal pictures elegant. Logan held out his hand. She gave him the schedule. Actually gave it to him, which tells you she still believed at that moment that she was presenting a deliverable instead of signing a confession. He read it without a single word. The stylus stopped moving. Her flat iron ticked as it cooled. Somewhere down the hall, a violinist was tuning the same 3 notes. Daniel Okafor appeared in the doorway with 2 cameras around his neck and the stillness of a man who has seen this exact structural failure from 400 angles. The room went so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. Then Logan folded the paper once, looked straight at his daughter, and said, "If the woman who carried this groom all the way to this altar isn't in these pictures, there won't be a wedding album worth opening." Dad! Ashley's voice found its footing fast. She was, after all, a professional. It's an aesthetic choice. Don't say aesthetic to me again today. He didn't raise his voice. 31 years of running crews means never having to. He turned to the doorway. Daniel, you build this list? I photograph what I'm given, Daniel said. Then, after a beat that he had clearly weighed for a week, but I flagged it. He pulled out his phone, scrolled, and held it up. An email, dated May 28th. Flagging, no portrait on the family list includes the groom's mother. My standard set includes groom and mother. Please confirm this is intentional. The reply had come from Ashley's account 11 minutes later. He read it aloud evenly. A man entering a document into the record. The list is final as sent. Please don't raise this with the groom. Please don't raise this with the groom. Alan's head came up. You told him not to. He didn't finish. He looked at the email, then at his bride, and I watched 3 years of translations fail at once. Marisol had materialized at the door the way 16-year veterans materialize. Tablet in hand, face professionally blank. She turned the screen toward Logan without editorializing. The planning portal's changelog. Removed. Portrait, groom and mother. Removed. Reception, mother-son dance. March 4th, 11:52 p.m. User, AW. 16 years, Marisol said quietly, to no one in particular, and I've never had to show anybody this screen. And then, because the universe occasionally has a sense of timing, Renata Sokol arrived with the flower boxes, corsages, boutonnieres, 22 years of reading rooms, and she read this one wrong on purpose or not at all because she said cheerfully to Logan, "We're all square by the way, Mrs. Callahan settled the flower difference back in February. Cashier's check, before I'd had my coffee. Wouldn't let me breathe a word. Silence has textures. This one had rebar in it. What difference?" Ashley said. And then her face did the thing it had done at the planning coffee, the uncurated thing, as the arithmetic landed. Dad, I thought you... I didn't, Logan said. Vivian appeared in the doorway in champagne silk, took in the room in one sweep, and said, "Ashley," the way mothers say a name when it is the entire sentence. And Ashley broke. Not prettily. Cornered people never break prettily. Do any of you know what it's like getting married next to a saint? Her voice cracked on the word. The 2 jobs. The homework in the break room. Alan tells those stories like scripture. Every dinner, every toast, there's the shrine. I have planned this day for 18 months and I wanted one day, that wasn't a tribute to somebody else's sacrifice. The room let that sit. I never told those stories, I said, because I hadn't. Not once, not ever. The whole point of carrying something quietly is the quiet. I did, Alan said. His voice was low. I told them because they're the best thing I know about myself. Logan set the schedule down on the vanity and opened the worn leather album instead, one-handed, to a page he clearly didn't need to search for. He turned it toward his daughter. A black and white photograph. A wedding, 1963, a young Logan-shaped groom, and front and center beside him, a thin woman in a wool coat with one button that didn't match the others. My mother cleaned rooms at the Statler Hotel for 11 years so I could buy a ladder truck and pretend I built something alone, he said. That's her, at my wedding, in the coat she had, in the middle of every photograph, because I would have canceled the church before I moved her 1 inch out of frame. He closed the album. So here's where we are, Ashley. Fix the list. Or your mother and I will spend the portrait hour at table 9 keeping Deborah company, and Daniel can take pictures of 212 empty chairs. Nobody moved. Then my son did. Alan crossed the room, took the schedule off the vanity, and held his hand out to Daniel, who put a pen in it with the readiness of a man who'd been hoping. Alan flattened the page against the wall and wrote at the top, above the bride's slot, above everyone's, in the cramped little handwriting I'd watched form under a receptionist's desk by flashlight. 240. Groom and his mother. First. He handed it to Daniel. First, he said, in case the pen hadn't been clear. Then he turned to me, and for a second, he was 7 and 17 and 30 all at once. Mom, please stay. Not for the pictures. His voice went somewhere it hadn't been in years. I've been keeping the peace so long, I forgot you're the one who taught me what peace costs. I looked at my son's handwriting on that page, the same crowded letters from 100 break room worksheets, and I stayed. Not because the schedule changed, because his handwriting had finally shown up on his own life. At 2:40, we stood on the west lawn, and my son pinned the corsage to my navy dress himself. One white rose, pale blue ribbon. His hands were perfectly steady. One of us has steady hands, and I've decided that counts as a family trait. Passed forward. Daniel worked fast and said almost nothing, and at one point he lowered the camera, looked at whatever he had just captured, and nodded once. The nod of a man confirming a level line. Vivian asked quietly if she could have one photograph of just the two of us, the mothers. She held my hand out of frame and squeezed it right as the shutter went. I don't know what her marriage to Logan has been across 4 decades, but I know what her grip said. Some of us see you and saw you late and are sorry about the order. Ashley stood where she was placed and smiled where smiling was scheduled. She was civil to me in the way a treaty is civil. At one point, our eyes met across the lawn and something moved in hers that wasn't apology yet, but was at least inventory. I can work with inventory. Inventory is where every honest claim begins. The ceremony was beautiful. I cried at the normal parts, which felt like a luxury. To be a mother crying at a wedding for the ordinary reasons, in an ordinary front row seat, visible. At the reception, the DJ's voice came over the speakers after dinner. At this time, we invite the groom and his mother to the floor. I looked at Marisol across the room. She tapped her tablet once and gave me the smallest nod in the hospitality industry. Version 7 of the timeline, I learned later, had the dance restored, annotated in her professional notes, reinstated her original plan. 16 years. The classics. Van Morrison came up in the speakers. Days like this. Alan is a foot taller than me now, which changes the mechanics, but some part of both of us remembered the kitchen, because we found the old sway inside 4 bars. Halfway through, quietly, into the top of my head. There was never a college fund, was there? It wasn't a question, so I didn't answer it. Dance, Alan. The watch too? Your father's watch bought a semester of chemistry you got a B- in, I said. Best money I ever spent. Dance. He laughed the way you laugh at a wedding so that you won't do the other thing, and held on tighter, and we finished the song with his chin resting on my head, and 212 people saw it, and one photographer I will love forever moved around us the whole time like quiet weather. Logan gave the last toast of the night. He is not a speech man and said so. I price roofs, he told the room. Here's the whole trade. You can tell everything about a structure by what it's built on, and nothing by the paint. He raised his glass, and he did not look at the head table when he said the rest. To the 2 mothers in this room, who did the building. 212 people drank to that. Ashley drank too. I watched her do it. Her eyes were wet and complicated, and her glass, I noticed, was raised all the way. At the end of the night, she found me by the coat check. The pictures will be beautiful, she said. It was the closest thing to an apology she had in stock that day. They'll be true, I said. That's better. She nodded like a woman signing for a package she didn't remember ordering, but signing all the same. 3 months now. Alan calls on Sundays at 6. Sometimes there's news. Usually there isn't, which is the whole point of a phone. He told me he and Ashley are seeing a counselor, his idea, and she went. I give her that fully. Showing up is a language, and she's in the beginner class, and she attends. In October, a note arrived on heavy cream cardstock in brand strategist penmanship. I'm learning the difference between a picture and a record. I'm sorry I tried to edit yours. Signed, Ashley Whitfield Callahan. The hyphen doing structural work. It wasn't everything. It was true. In claims, we call that a valid partial. We pay those. The second Saturday of October, at 8 in the morning, a truck pulled into my driveway. Whitfield Commercial Roofing. A foreman named Sal and 3 men with coffee and a work order I never placed. Paid in full. Memo line, in handwriting I'd seen once before. Folding a photographer's schedule. Family rate. I called Logan. He let it ring twice, picked up, said, "Weather's coming," and hung up. Roofers. Last week, a flat package arrived from Daniel Okafor's studio. The 240 photograph, printed and framed. My son and me on the west lawn, his hands at my shoulder. The corsage sharp in the foreground. 1 white rose, pale blue ribbon, completely in focus, exactly the way I built it. On the back, in cramped familiar handwriting. 1 word. I hung it by the front door where the light finds it every morning around 7. The first hard rain came on a Tuesday. Out of habit, I took the big pot down from the cabinet and set it on the hallway floor, under the old seam. Then I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and listened. Nothing dripped. I sat there a long while anyway, listening to the rain do what rain does when it can't get in anymore. Land and slide and leave. Then I put the pot back in the cabinet, walked past the photograph on my way to bed, and touched the frame once, the way you touch a thing that's load-bearing. 1 white rose, a pale blue ribbon, my son's handwriting on the back where nobody can see it, holding up the whole picture. First,